Hello people, it's Phoenix here. In the middle of actually trying to get a capture card for Play Deer Days, which I'm watching on my TV right now, which I just got. For those of you know not following my Twitter. So far, pretty much actually I'm doing a deck profile, at least over my thoughts over playing a deck so far with this. The loners at least. And so far, and also mind you, this is also a deck I never utilized before TG. Or played utilizing all the Dinomorphia decks that are utilizing most variations: the Babysaurus, the Pilta, the Giant Rex. One of them has this, but personally, I actually feel like that card's more like a 2 of personally for hand trap wise. Two soul eating over, 3 of both doublets, and finally the most powerful card in the deck, Dino Rustler. And also following it, the most powerful card, the first turn actually. Everything else has been out at that point. And the trunk and the ace main monster, Ultimate Conductor Tyranno. So far, and Archtrain Eccentric, which you're only utilizing just for its pendulum effect. Or for the monster effect, but personally, either way works. And from there, so far, is my thoughts on the deck so far. It's pretty good overall for what it does. It has the Heavy Storm Duster, which is technically the necessary cards you gotta craft this whole festival. Through most of the lower decks, I noticed. If you're not running Heavy Storm Duster at any of your at the festival, something's wrong with you, because that's the pretty much the best the best trap card essentially. Since you use their turn essentially when they're moving, and you can also get rid of Pendulums of Mind, which for some reason or another I follow with you and then deposit them onto the main monster deck for some reason outside their hand. Finally, the most burn card, Imperm. Imperm essentially is the best thing since you don't have to rely on as much though. So I'll put less focus on that personally. Finally, Ice Dragon's Prison, which is for those cards like the dinosaurs that can contribute and banish both players one monster field. Finally, the main bread and butter deck, the Dinomorphia Vision. Everything else is essentially just cards you can utilize, or that if you don't need to worry about stuff. First off, the Dinomorphia Brutes. Essentially, that's your main target, essentially, to proc off your Babysaurus or your Petaton to mostly start prepping out your field up so you can actually start doing some stuff like utilizing the Ultimate Electro Tyranno first off. Or just go to the main fusion ones as I just did. Most of the matches I utilize that. Or go into Alvasaurus. Or this. Or Duckus. Personally, you might notice most monsters being low, so you might go into solo late afterwards, depending on the matches I noticed. That the main trump card of the deck is Dinomorphia here. Because all the shenanigans we can potentially do, especially with against the Punch and Load deck I noticed earlier. Besides that, you also got Sonic's, your most useful one. Overall, it's good in the sense that you have to worry about battle damage or effect damage, which is better than most decks. With all their traps mostly doing it, but you mostly want to go into, I noticed, going into Dinomorphia, into a stealth outwards. It's the main way to go, unless first you're going to going offensive versus defense. If going defense, then pretty much stealth is where you need to be at. One thing I wish is that you can actually negate no monster's effect like Dino, so essentially it's a 4K beater essentially at all times, which is pretty powerful. Also, I just realized Brood doesn't target anything specifically. Hold on, let me take a look. I just thought that kind of instantly. I just thought it targeted something else. Huh, that's my bad. In other words, you essentially will just not destroy your own stuff. Essentially, your opponents destroy themselves. unless by some effects here and there. Overall, here's some matches I have. Okay, first off, the most of the deck essentially is it just utilizes everything from the loner deck I first based. Time Gazer, which is not that good, but you essentially will run it just for the scale 8. Even though pretty much essentially trap cards mostly, but personally one or two. Personally, that's how I feel like, but it's whatever. 2 Archway Centrics, but that's card to staple of for all removals points, since it's then technically the best spell slash trap, essentially in theory. Perform House Go Rope. I'll go over this profile eventually. Starting tomorrow after Birds, but I'm also doing some deck profiles on the lone decks, my personal thoughts. Afterwards, I'll make the own video, which one I think is the best. And that will be during the 3rd video. Now let's get straight to match. Style of pretty much actually, I don't have much matches that were back and forth, at least. Or get more into perspective of how good the deck is, if at all. Overall, my hand was bricked. That was the first thing I noticed, but I do have a way to essentially pay my life points. I also got something to destroy and negate. Also, let me adjust my volume for this. Essentially made my point to it. They also did that. Oh, I did not know what the part they surrendered. I didn't know why. I was like, essentially, this would be your standard opening if you have bricks. But personally, I just did this one for lol. Now on to the real match. Oh, essentially the same. Most people are mostly just starting to use this deck, so they didn't know what the ultimate move was. There was some better stuff to do it. Also watching Deer. I really can't wait till I get stage smack able mostly streamer games on my Switch. But I also need to catch cards though. Overall, my first move was just to get my Thursday, since I got some removal at least of some sort. My opponent's turn. I also got Dinomorphia and Dino Domain. Overall, it was my best move I could essentially make. I know what some opponents are going to do, so I destroy both of them immediately, so they don't pendulum. I will take the risk, essentially, of them doing it. Overall, I realize I should have allowed him, so I can actually proc off his skill originally, just to special summon one monster, and I could have actually had some more of the stuff I need. Decided to banish it to get more fusion off into stealth. I realized my opponents were doing for scale. My opponent just suddenly gave up since I was going to do another one. So the thing is, there wasn't much perspective I could put into his deck without it. So far, most of the festival, you kind of noticed, like I did, that most people were just playing the loner decks at that point. Like, I'm building a Tratrix deck at least on the hand, so I actually have something to work with. Also, my cable's super long, but I was also measuring the distance from my switch to my laptop. So far, I always want to go first as possible. The Astral, the fact that it's actually the first card, I don't have to worry about it much. Essentially, I noticed my opponent was going over most of that, and I was like, what the heck are they doing? Essentially, Coroncop Sorcerer was there. I figured it was pretty much my best bet, was mostly get most of my stuff off. Essentially, I noticed my opponent was going to destroy both of me either way. Since I can't target it, proccing wise, since it's activated now. So I destroyed the other pendulum at least, so they had nowhere to work with. Essentially, I sent my card. I sent the rest of my removal. I did that mostly so I can at least to work with some stuff. Right on. But mostly for daily purposes, so I can destroy. Essentially, I could do anything else, but defensively, my opponent can't do much. But I also have Head Twister, which I, for some reason, didn't realize, though, but it wouldn't have mattered. Since allowing me, I decided to summon another hole. Remove that, mostly special summon a monster, get my get 171, then deal another 500. A burn. I decided to special get one more test. Activate the skill again to essentially increase his attacking power. Since I don't have any more Dinomorphias left in deck, since you only got 6, I decided to do that. I should have gone for Exceeds. I realized later on, I realized Laggy was pretty much the best option. I should have gone into that so I could do more damage, so I can just turn, but it wouldn't matter this turn either way. Essentially, I just negated it. I started out the Burr has particular landing, makes them win that way. Overall, that was one of the better ways I can actually work with. Your opponent would not know what to expect from you, essentially. With that in mind. Overall, Giant Rex essentially is mostly a deck, mostly for a beast stick. Also, this is the part where I start facing other people. First off, I got Astral Karibo, Maxi, a number deck. I know it's first off, and Jinzo Ejector. You'd be kind of seeing more Jinzo cards because of this whole festival mine. So Jinzo is mostly the main monster. You're gonna see most of the whole thing. So mostly Dinomorphia, its main weakness, just run with these Jinzo cards. It's not worth it. Well, along with a Danger Engine, which is interesting. Running some Kaijus, which is not surprising. Mostly a lot of Danger Engines. With long Fairy Tail on the side of it, and some other stuff that's generic. While using stuff like Pale, evenly matched the best hand trip ever made. I'm more surprised it's a SR instead of a UR. Imperms, 3 this time. Solid Judgment and Call. They're essentially running a bit of everything you parents to face. I think. Like Evil Swarm, essentially. I knew not anything explain this one. Time Thief, which is the best stuff. But the only downside of that one, draw 1 card. It's ended. Photon Strike Monster. Personally, the only thing I found odd, essentially, was the odd eyes of all things. Since I'm surprised they're not even running 1 odd eyes at least, to mostly give value to this level 7. Dark Armed. Huh. Surprisingly, not mostly a lot of stuff. It's mostly just a number engine, I feel like, Thunder End. But mostly utilizes everything else. Essentially, my hand bricked hard, but it has everything else that I could probably will need eventually. I felt like. Essentially, I died fully melee so I can get some defenses in, and also some way to relay. Makes that a quick effect. I'm allowed to pay 2,000. Essentially, I got my second fusion form of stealth break. Special summon out. Mostly so I get more defense, but also I can set up some stuff and send more cards in my grave, which I kind of will need for this whole match, I felt like. I realize what afterwards they're going to do from here. I realize they're going to drag Willoughby. Essentially, I made relay happen. Essentially, just should have done that. I'm more surprised they go into what we realized afterwards was divine. Essentially, just go out since they realized it. I think if I had known, I should have just got rid of the rank 8 originally, as you noticed, potentially just to stall or win. Overall, that match, you always should pay attention to level 8s. Personally, that's what I realized afterwards, and this is just another lone deck, you know. Mind you, this is a Lorne deck, essentially, battle, I felt like, most is best. Essentially, I realized my point ahead. I did this a couple times where I wish... Personally, I will just run Ash as a 1 at 2, I feel like, for Selfast. I'm still looking at, like, three different decks. Okay, sorry, I was answering something that came up. Also, I didn't pause this time. What happened was I down wrestler into destroying it. If nothing else, then I would have to deal with the other monster, but I'm like, I'm going to make sure that that's the case. But also, so I can actually get my dinos in there. Like, I wish I could have utilized it earlier on. Like, Star Churn of such for the trap. But I couldn't for some damn reason. Essentially, I learned my lesson afterwards when destroying my monsters. Banish that since it does nothing. With this, I'm allowed to send one card. So now I got burn and such. Also, I got some removal from battle damage. It's not something I'll pretty much will use. My opponent will actually activate one more card. I decided to special summon the other one. With this, I set my second trap, which I will need. But once it's going to battle phase, they're going to destroy most of my monsters by putting defense for one reason, just for defense. I decided to go links. I decided to actually... My opponent realized what they're doing here. I realized it. When I realized that card, after I was like... The timing of that card, I was like, wait a minute. I can destroy it. And you know what this effect does? When this card spells to destroy all cards, if you're in a festival and you face this deck and a loner, this is where everything else will come back to haunt you if you got this on the field. Essentially, I timed it right just to do my burn. Personally, that bird is essentially the best monster in this whole deck. You mostly utilize the other one to essentially do that, but this one mostly deal the burn need. It's hilarious still. This is the one thing that made my day. Overall, that's the rest of the fights. The matches. As you all noticed, which I don't have a lot of time, and I mostly got get ready to edit this out before the end of the day. Have a nice day or night wherever you are when watching this.